Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/KYHistoryPod. Welcome back to the Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host, Jameson Cable, and I'm here with David Kirkpatrick. How you doing?
Great, you?
Doing good. We are ready to talk about some more Kentucky history and dive into this new Republic era that we've kind of gotten into. And we're pretty much just going to jump right into it and start talking a little bit about that. Well, we've talked about this before. I should preference this. Probably about a year or two ago when we talked about Benjamin Logan, we kind of we're talking about his life and kind of went through this a little bit in the sense of Kentucky becoming a state. If you want to get that biography of Benjamin Logan, it is a really good one, and it kind of walks you through his role of the state. And we kind of talked about that a little, so this is going to be a little bit of a rehash, but we're just going to kind of start off with kind of talking about that time period from when Kentucky was pushing for statehood, and then when they became a state. And then we're going to get into episodes to come, maybe this episode as well, the first Kentucky Constitution, kind of that, it didn't really last long, but the first Kentucky Constitution and how it was written out and what was some of the things that it entailed. So sound good?
That's a great place to start.
Yeah. Again, some of this information that I got was from John Mason Brown, a book that he wrote, pretty much kind of outlining what I just said. This book was published in 1889. So a bit of an old book, a little bit, a few 100 or so years old there. But it's a really book I kind of stumbled upon, a few years ago that kind of just talked about every little thing that happened. And I'll tell you, what I was looking for was the Danville Political Society book, and I found this one. So sometimes it's just the way things go. So
that's right.
Anyway, so Kentucky's early history, of course, we all know, pioneers, Daniel Boone, Simon Kenton, we've discussed a lot of them, James Harrod, of course, Benjamin Logan, all kind of came over here when, before Kentucky was a state, when it was Kentucky County, and then it became Lincoln, Jefferson, and Fayette counties, and so forth. And, I think it was about 9 total before Kentucky became a state as far as counties go. And that kind of stuff happened. The Revolutionary War took place in Kentucky. People don't really think about that as well. But a bunch of stuff kind of happened. So in the county and the district of Kentucky, didn't really last that long, 1779 to 1780. And that's pretty much where things kind of began. A judicial tribunal, right, convened in Harrodsburg. And this was one of the first acts that was to validate land claims, which we can get into the terrible land claim stuff that happened before and after what we might just need to do an episode on land claims, why they were bad. But anyway, the organization of land office marked kind of the beginning of the civil part of Kentucky, if you want to say it like that, because obviously people have been in Kentucky for thousands of years, but this civil European style representation of government and so forth. But the county of Kentucky kind of included Richard Callaway and John Todd. They attended a meeting in Williamsburg, Virginia. Boonesboro and Louisville were incorporated during this time, and the need for a future state was proposed. So this is 1779, 1780, so good 12 years before Kentucky became a state, this was on people's radar. Kentucky County, again, was divided into Jefferson, Lincoln, and Fayette. That was May 1780. And interesting enough, the name Kentucky was almost lost to Fincastle. Could have been
Okay.
Fincastle, but luckily, luckily we dodged that. We left that
Yeah.
in Virginia.
Kentucky sounds better, I think.
yeah, yeah. The region was officially designated as the District of Kentucky in 1782, and this was under the Commonwealth of Virginia. And for the first time, the pioneers and the frontiersmen had organized actual, civil and military authority with leaders like John Todd, Benjamin Logan, John Floyd, and they kind of were the overseers of their respective counties. I think Lincoln or Logan was Lincoln County, Floyd was Jefferson, and Todd was Fayette.
Right.
But that was kind of some of the first beginnings of that time period of getting into more organized government, because the whole point of separation from beginning to end was Virginia was too far away. So
Right.
things are going in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of what comes first, the cart or the horse, because you have to have civil government in existence to deal with the influx of migrants coming to Kentucky. But at the same time, having an organized government where you could go and take care of things like filing those land grants and that sort of thing leads to a greater influx of people moving to Kentucky. So Kentucky was a happening place in the 1780s. And, of course, you get the good with the bad. So the downside to government is taxes. And the first taxation in the state's actually imposed in Lincoln County in 1783 and it was 10 pounds of tobacco. So something not a lot of people know, but tobacco was so prevalent at that time in Virginia, and of course, by extension, Kentucky, you could pay your taxes in it. But despite the growth and despite all these good changes that are taking place and the evolution of Kentucky, as you said, as a society, they're facing a lot of challenges. They've got legal matters. There's still the distance from the Virginia legislature that you mentioned. And anybody from Kentucky who's ever made the drive to Virginia Beach, I mean, you're almost following the route. You're a little farther than those guys would have been. But imagine doing that on horseback or on foot. It really fueled the need for statehood, and it really underscored how remote parts of Kentucky were compared to Virginia. And so as settlers increased, Native American attacks decreased some following the American Revolution. And the idea of Kentucky gaining its independence really gains some momentum. The war's over, people can focus on that. And consultation of the militia in November 1784 gets the ball rolling. It's led by Benjamin Logan, of course. And, he brings the issue to the forefront. And really, without the authority to raise a militia or impose taxes, for troops and paying for Kentucky's defense, it was obvious that the state just could not survive as this extension of what was happening in Williamsburg and Richmond and places like that. They had no recourse other than to seek separation. And, it sounds like an obvious thing. We've got 50 states now, but this was kind of a new idea back then. There was nothing in the Articles of Confederation that covered it. It was a big deal.
Yeah, yeah, and like at this point, the Kentucky was the 15th, so Vermont, I believe, was the 14th. So that it was kind of a new thing. How do we go about doing this? How do we start all this stuff? So the convention of the militia delegates, which was in December of 1784, representatives met for 10 days. They discussed the need for statehood, and pretty much they all were like, yes. But they were kind of also cautious about alienating Virginia. You don't want to cut off your line, I guess, if that makes sense.
Right.
They decided that each militia should send delegates to Danville to kind of discuss how to proceed further. This basically slow and steady approach was pretty much influenced by their desire to ensure that Virginia was happy for their statehood. Basically, they didn't want to just say, "Hey, we're done with you. See you later." Because in a sense, if they did that, that could have some repercussions of where's the support coming from? Where's the help? The U.S. Is just basically being formed, and then you would be completely separated and alienated away from those other colonies or the new states. And if you're like, hey, we're a new state, they might not be as quick to ensure your safety, and you need you need that.
Oh, absolutely. And you think about it too. I mean, what if Virginia says, fine, you can be a state, but you're going to pay us back for all the money we spent guarding the frontier? And like you said, the United States is so young at this point. The Constitution that we have today is written in 1787. And like you said, you're talking 1784. This is 3 years before the Constitution's even written. So it's a big deal. This really is new territory. And yeah, I think if this era of Kentucky history was going to have a name, it should be, this could have been an email instead of a, because they call convention after convention. And so, in 1786, the idea has moved a little forward. We're 2 years out from what you just spoke of. And delegates are chosen in August. But when they get there, they realize they have a lack of a quorum. Some of the people who are supposed to be there can't. They're serving in the militia, doing other things. And it's not until January. And again, the delegates are chosen in August. It's January before they actually have a quorum that can be maintained. So, and they finally make the move. They vote to separate. However, the clock starts ticking once you do that, because they have until June 1, 1790 to complete their application, rather, for lack of a better term, to the Virginia legislature. And this is a huge challenge, because what kind of state is Kentucky going to be? It's made up of a lot of different kinds of people.
Yeah, and well, I mean, application. I mean, that's basically. I mean, there's not a formal application. Check these boxes, but that's pretty much, they have to check the boxes to become a state.
Right.
But this does. I mean, it does open up the pathway to statehood. In 1788, June of 1788, the federal constitution was then passed, like you had said, which this helped Kentucky's delegates, and the statehood process really gained momentum. Because, like you said, now there's a route to get there. We got, the United States is set up, so now we can go forward and set up the state of Kentucky. Kentucky's statehood was, entangled with many foreign interests. You had Spain, you had Britain. Obviously, Kentucky was part of Virginia, so they were part of the United States. But even the United States are all trying to control the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River is crucial to Kentucky as their bid for statehood. And the U.S. Congress plans to, for westward expansion. So this makes it even bigger, a bigger deal. Another convention, of course, is held in 1789. And this kind of was marked by the political intrigue and tensions surrounding this potential for treason against Virginia. Is this a bad thing? We don't really want to do that. If we want to be in the United States, obviously. Kentucky was not yet accepted as a state, but the desire for a new government for the local people and abroad was very strong, because they wanted to keep that. And as we said, United States wants to go west. Mississippi and Ohio. If Kentucky becomes an official state, all of a sudden you are connected to both. But I do think it's kind of crazy, like you were saying, with the quorum.
Right.
It literally takes them years to get, or months to even get a meeting together. Then be like, hey, I know this meeting's important, but got to go do this for a while. And can I come back in about a month or two?
Yeah. That is surprising. And I guess on the one hand, I can see where you're coming from. If your homestead's been attacked and you're like, well, I don't want to leave for a week or two. I want to make sure that there are no native warriors in the area. On the other hand, if you're the guy that has shown up in Danville, I mean, are you looking at your watch saying, come on, guys? So, yeah, I mean, it's a problem for them. And, of course, in July 1790, they take a big step. They do something very novel and very different. They hold a convention. But this was important, because this one leads to separation, and Kentucky really is set to be admitted to the Union, and they pick a date. It's June 1, 1792, and the journey is fraught with plenty of challenges, as we've discussed, especially those relating to domestic issues as well. We've talked about defending the frontier against exterior powers like native tribes, but also the British and the French and the Spanish. But there's a lot of stuff going on internally too that Kentucky has to deal with. One of those items, of course, is slavery, and that was really one of the things that fueled the debate. Um, George Nicholas plays a significant role in ensuring that slavery is upheld in the new state. That this was a battle that had been going on with the ideas of liberty and freedom, and Kentucky really debates strongly not having slavery, but in the end, it does win out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and more on that. Talk about George Nicholas, but one of the opposite people was James Garrett, which we'll talk about in another episode as well. He was one of the people campaigning for Kentucky to be a free state. I think, and this is me recalling. I think it was like 20-16.
Yeah.
20 votes for slavery, 16 against. So you can think of how crazy that would have been if Kentucky became the first state, or got admitted into the United States and was a free state in 1792. That changes so much in that amount of time, or at that time, and rewrites U.S. history, obviously. But
absolutely. Yeah, you think about how early that is. Pennsylvania, for example, you think of the Quakers and being accepting and that kind of thing. They abolished slavery in Pennsylvania in 1792. So, I mean, Kentucky, while they're debating this, they really are at the forefront of that. But they press on whether they make the mistake of keeping it. But nevertheless, they press forward with the Constitution. And it's a long and arduous journey. There's plenty of political intrigue and external pressures as well. And we've talked about those in some of the earlier episodes with the Spanish conspiracy and all of that. But finally, June 1, 1792 rolls around, and Kentucky becomes the 15th state to join the United States. And just as a caveat, as you said earlier, Vermont beats us, but Kentucky started the application first. So in my book, Kentucky is the 14th state. Vermont is their date ahead of us. Not bitter. Love you guys in Vermont. It's just, But so we're going to explore the celebrations and challenges that lay ahead. But nevertheless, a pretty significant milestone.
Mm-hmm. And I never really thought about it that way. You start the application first. I think that might put us a leg ahead of them.
That's right. Don't cut line. That's right.
that's the do not cut line. We were in line. We can't help it. You didn't have 20 conventions.
That's right. That you got straight to the point. You're half our size. Come on.
Yeah. Oh gosh, but yeah, very very good. Very interesting. Just how long it took. But yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, or a quick bit of it. Again, if you want a little more detail, I would recommend go back, listen to some of the Benjamin Logan episodes, because it does good about just following through with his life, and just because he's at just about all his conventions and everything else too. Some good stuff. Well, let's we'll pause right there. That's a pretty good intro for this little episode about just catching people up, I guess. From the time statehood started till it became an actual state, or I shouldn't say when statehood started. I should say when the process started to now. Kentucky has become a state, 1792, June 1st. Don't forget it, and so forth. So, anything else?
I think that sums it up well, and we're getting ready to get into some really fascinating and fairly unknown territory. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, some Constitution stuff. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well. We're patreon.com/kyhistorypod. You've probably heard about Daniel Boone, but what about the rest of the frontiersmen who came to Kentucky and settled? That's what we want to bring to the Kentucky History Channel. The stories of the untold, the stories of those forgotten. One thing to expect on our channel is great Kentucky content. Some stories that you've never heard of. The Night Riders, who began in western Kentucky. Bloody Monday, the riots in Louisville. The assassination of Governor Goebel, the only governor ever assassinated in the United States. Stories from all over Kentucky, stories that are unforgettable once you've heard them. You can find out who counties in Kentucky are named after and how your county got started. From beginning to end, we plan to document every county in Kentucky, all 120. Reach out to us on all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And also leave a comment on one of our YouTube videos. You can also check out our podcast episodes. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many more. We're always seeking to find more Kentucky history so we can bring it to you, the viewers, the listeners. We want all the stories and all the events from Kentucky's great history to be told and shared everywhere.